He was wearing the navy blazer I'd given him for his birthday, the one I'd saved up 3 months to buy, when he told me he wasn't coming to the hospital. Not I can't make it. Not something came up. He stood in the doorway of our bedroom, checking his cufflinks in the mirror, and said, "The dinner's been on the calendar for 6 weeks, sweetheart. Your mum is already on her way to you. You'll be fine." I was 32 weeks pregnant and bleeding. Not a lot. Enough. Enough that my OB had said, "Go now, don't wait," and I'd called my husband from the parking lot of the grocery store with my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I remember the eggs were still in the back seat. I kept thinking about the eggs. He came home to get changed first. That detail took me a long time to say out loud. People would ask, "Was he there with you?" And I'd say, "He came by the house." Because the full version, that he stopped home to put on his blazer before his company's client dinner while his wife was being admitted for a threatened preterm labor, was a sentence that made people go very quiet in a way I didn't know how to handle yet. My name is Sloane. I was 31 years old, 27 weeks into my second pregnancy, working part-time as a pediatric occupational therapist in Charlotte, North Carolina. My husband, I'll call him my husband because that's what he was, legally for another 8 months, ran the Southeast sales division of a commercial real estate firm. He was good at his job, charming. The kind of man who remembered your coffee order and your kids' names and made you feel, right up until the moment he didn't, like the most important person in the room. We'd been married 4 years. Our daughter, Harper, was almost 3. The dinner was for a client my husband had been courting for 2 years, a developer out of Atlanta who controlled a portfolio my husband said was worth career-defining money. I understood that. I did. I had grown up watching my father work, watching what ambition costs a family, and I had made my peace with a lot of things in my marriage because I told myself I understood the pressure he was under. But I was in a hospital bed with a monitor strapped around my stomach, listening to my son's heartbeat blip across a screen, and my husband was eating Chilean sea bass at a rooftop restaurant 4 miles away. My mother sat beside me for 7 hours. She held my hand during every contraction. She drove Harper to our neighbor's house so the sound of the monitors wouldn't scare her. She bought me terrible hospital coffee and bad magazines and pretended they were good. And at midnight, when the contractions finally slowed and the on-call doctor said the words, "cervical stability," she put her head down on the side rail of my bed and cried quietly for about 30 seconds before she straightened up and said, "Okay, good, good." My husband texted at 10:47 p.m, dinner ran long, closed the deal. Big news tomorrow. Hope you're resting. He came in the next morning at 8 with a bouquet of gas station flowers. Carnations dyed blue. He set them on the windowsill and kissed my forehead and said, "How's our boy?" And I smiled. I said, "Stable." And I watched him pour himself a cup of my hospital coffee and scroll through his phone while the monitor beeped, and something in me went very, very quiet. Not angry, not yet. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when you realize you've been performing a feeling for so long, you've forgotten what the real one was supposed to feel like. I want to be fair here. My husband was not a cruel man in the dramatic sense. He never raised his voice at me. He didn't disappear every weekend or stay out until 3 a.m. What he did was subtler and I think harder to name. He had a hierarchy, a running, invisible ranking of what mattered, and I had believed for 4 years that I was near the top of it. The blue carnations were the moment I understood I had been wrong about that. I went home after 2 days on bed rest instructions, a prescription for progesterone, and a follow-up appointment every week until delivery. My mother-in-law called that afternoon to say she'd heard everything went fine, which told me exactly what my husband had reported to his family. Fine. Everything went fine. Harper climbed into my lap the minute I walked through the door and pressed her ear against my belly, which she did every day, convinced she could hear her brother talking. My husband ordered Thai food and told me about the deal over dinner, how the developer had shaken his hand and said he was the best in the business, and I sat across the table and ate my pad CU and nodded in the right places. 3 weeks later, I found the credit card statement. I wasn't looking for anything. I want to be clear about that. I was paying bills online the way I did every month because I handled our household accounts. Utilities, mortgage, groceries, Harper's preschool tuition. My husband handled his own business expenses and his personal card, which he'd always been vague about in the specific way that had never quite triggered alarm, but had never quite felt comfortable either. The statement came through on a shared folder in our Google Drive. He'd accidentally linked it months before when he was trying to share a different document and never removed it. I saw the file name, thought it was a receipt I needed, opened it. 42 transactions over 3 months. The restaurant where he'd had the client dinner, 1,847 for 4 people. Fine, I knew about that dinner. But the same restaurant 6 weeks earlier, $340. A hotel in Savannah I didn't recognize, $289 a night for 2 nights. A jewelry store on South End I had never been to, $618. Harper has a pair of pearl earrings I got her for her baptism. They cost $48 from a shop on Etsy. My husband has never bought me jewelry spontaneously in 4 years of marriage. Not once. I closed the laptop. I made Harper a snack. I watched her eat apple slices with peanut butter at the kitchen island, and I thought very calmly, I need to know what this is before I do anything else. I texted my brother the next morning. He's a licensed attorney, civil litigation, mostly, but he knows family law well enough. And more importantly, he knows me well enough to understand when I say I need advice, not comfort, that I mean it. He called me back in 11 minutes. I read him the transactions. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he said, "Do you have access to that folder still?" I did. "Download everything. Don't move it, don't delete it, don't say a word to him yet. Do you have your own bank account?" I had a personal savings account I'd maintained since before we were married. Not much in it. A few $1,000s I'd kept for what my mother always called just-in-case money. She'd told me the week before my wedding to never fully close my own financial door. I'd thought she was being unromantic. She was being a mother. "Keep it separate," my brother said. "I'm going to give you the name of a family law attorney here in Charlotte. She's good. She's discreet. Can you get to an appointment without him knowing?" Harper had preschool on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My husband traveled to Atlanta every other week. The timing wasn't complicated. I want to tell you I was falling apart during this period. I want to say I was crying in the shower every night and barely holding it together, because that's the version that makes sense. That's the version that feels proportionate to what was happening. But the truth is, I was strangely focused. The way you get in an emergency when the adrenaline turns everything sharp and simple. I think my body had been in some version of emergency mode since the hospital, and this was just more information, more clarity, the picture coming into focus. The attorney, whose name I will not share because she deserves her privacy, met with me on a Thursday morning while Harper was at preschool. She had a conference room with good light and a box of tissues on the table that I never used. I spread out what I had. The credit card statements, screenshots of the shared folder, a note I'd made of dates and amounts, and she looked at everything for a long time without speaking. Then she said, "How far along are you?" 35 weeks, I said. She nodded. "Okay, here's what I want you to understand. North Carolina is an equitable distribution state," she explained, which means marital assets are divided fairly, not necessarily equally. The house we own jointly. The retirement accounts were split between what each of us had contributed during the marriage. My husband's income during the marriage was marital property. The question of fault, adultery specifically, could be relevant to alimony under North Carolina law, which is different from many other states. The credit card charges, particularly the hotel and the jewelry, could be significant if we could demonstrate they were marital funds spent on an extramarital relationship. "Can we demonstrate that?" I asked. She looked at me. "That depends on what else you find." I found more, not by snooping, or not only by snooping, but because once you know what you're looking at, you start to see clearly. The mileage on his car, the weekends he said he was golfing, the name that appeared twice in his phone as a contact labeled with just initials, the way he'd started keeping his phone face down on the kitchen counter, which he'd never done before. I didn't confront him. I know that sounds cold. People ask me, even now, why I didn't just ask him directly, why I spent 6 weeks gathering information instead of having the conversation. And the honest answer is that I knew, somewhere I'd known for a while, and I was not going to give him the chance to manage me. He was very good at managing me. He was very good at the patient explanation, the reasonable tone, the way he could make me feel like my instincts were the problem. I had watched him do it in arguments about his mother, about Harper's sleep schedule, about money. He was a salesman, the best in the business. A developer from Atlanta had told him so. I was not going to let him sell me on this. My son was born at 38 weeks, 4 days, on a Tuesday morning in February. It was 15 degrees outside, and the hospital parking garage had ice on the ramps, and my husband drove us there at 5 in the morning, with a thermos of coffee and a bag he'd packed himself, which surprised me. He was present for the birth. He held my hand. He cried when our son was placed on my chest. And for a few minutes in that room, I felt something complicated and true that I don't have a clean word for. We named him Callum. He weighed 7 pounds, 2 ounces. He had my husband's ears and my mother's chin, and from the first moment he looked at me, I was ruined in the best possible way. We came home 3 days later. My husband carried the car seat in and set it on the kitchen island, and immediately took a call from someone at work, walking into the back hallway with his voice low. My mother was there. She'd been staying with us to help with Harper. She looked at me over his retreating back and said nothing. My mother is extremely good at saying nothing. That evening, my husband came to me while I was nursing Callum in the nursery and said his college roommate was in town just for the night, and they'd made plans months ago, a group dinner. He'd be back by 10. He looked at me the whole time. He said it in the specific way he always looked at me when he was asking permission by pretending not to ask permission. Callum was 4 days old. Go ahead, I said. He went. I waited until his car turned off our street. Then I called my brother. He just left, I said, 4 days after the baby was born. Dinner with friends. My brother was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then he said, Okay, is Mom there? Yes. Good, stay home. I'm coming tomorrow morning. Don't say anything to him tonight. My brother drove up from Raleigh first thing in the morning. He brought coffee from a place I love and a folder of paperwork from the attorney. He sat at my kitchen table with my mother while Callum slept on my chest, and he walked me through what was going to happen. The attorney had filed the paperwork the day before. My husband didn't know yet. She had also connected us with a forensic accountant, someone who specializes in marital financial investigations, who had reviewed the credit card statements and cross-referenced them with my husband's business expense reports. The hotel in Savannah had appeared on both a personal credit card and a business expense report. He had expensed the hotel to his company while also charging the room to our joint card. That was fraud. That was not a grey area. The jewelry store had a record of the purchase. The name on the gift receipt was not mine. My brother laid it all out quietly, in order, the way he does. He's good at being clear without being cruel. He's had a lot of practice with me over the years. When he comes home tonight, my brother said, You don't have to say anything about the other woman. You don't even have to say anything about the Savannah Hotel. The attorney will handle disclosure through the right channels. But he needs to be served, and then he needs to understand what the financial picture actually looks like. What does it look like? I asked. My brother glanced at my mother, then back at me. He's been misrepresenting income on our joint tax filings for the last 2 years. The accountant found it, which means the financial situation is going to involve some parties beyond just the two of you. I sat with that for a moment. Callum made a small sound in his sleep, and I shifted him and he settled. Okay, I said. There's one more thing. My brother set a single piece of paper in front of me. You have a prenuptial agreement. You signed it before the wedding. Do you remember what it says about infidelity? I remembered signing it. I remembered my husband saying it was standard, just protection for both of us. His family's attorneys had drafted it, nothing unusual. I remembered not reading it as carefully as I should have. I looked at the paper my brother had placed in front of me. The infidelity clause was not standard. It was extremely specific. If either spouse could demonstrate an extramarital relationship using marital funds, the offending party forfeited their claim to any appreciation in jointly held real property acquired during the marriage. Our house had appreciated significantly. Charlotte's Market had done what Charlotte's Market does. His family's attorneys drafted this, I said. Yes, my brother said. Why would they include that? My brother looked at me for a long moment. I asked the attorney the same question. Her best guess is that they drafted it to protect him from a potential future wife, and didn't think carefully about it running in both directions. I almost laughed. I didn't, but I almost did. My husband came home at 7:30. He came in through the garage door, set his keys on the counter, looked at my brother at the kitchen table and said, "Oh, hey, didn't know you were still here." "Sit down," my brother said. "I want to tell you my husband argued that he made a scene, that he did something dramatic I can describe. He didn't. He sat down. He looked at the folder on the table. He looked at me, and his face did something I had never seen it do before. It went very still, and underneath the stillness there was something that I think might have been relief. Like a man who's been waiting for something to happen and is finally done waiting." The attorney's process server had already been to his office that afternoon. He already knew. We sat at that table for 2 hours. My brother walked him through the financial documentation. My husband did not deny the hotel. He did not deny the expense reports. He confirmed the jewelry purchase when my brother placed the receipt in front of him, and he said a name, a woman's name, someone from his industry, someone I had met at a company event 2 years before and shaken hands with and thought seemed nice. I didn't cry. I want to be honest about that too. I sat there in my nursing bra with Callum asleep in the bassinet 6 feet away, and I didn't cry. I think I had done the crying already, in pieces, in the shower at 6 a.m. before anyone else was awake, during the weeks when I had known without knowing, when I was building the folder and making the notes and meeting with the attorney, and telling myself I was just being careful, just being sure. I was being sure. He left that night. He took a duffel bag and his garment bag and he drove to a hotel, and I stood at the front window and watched his headlights back out of the driveway, and Harper came downstairs in her pajamas and said, "Where's Daddy going?" And I said, "He has a work trip, Bug. Come here." She pressed her head against my shoulder and I held her in the dark hallway, and behind me in the bassinet, Callum breathed in and out, and the house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in a long time. My mother came and stood beside me. She didn't say anything. She just put her hand on my back, between my shoulder blades, and kept it there. The divorce took 11 months. There were complications. The tax filings required separate resolution with accountants, and, at one point, a very uncomfortable conversation with the IRS that my brother helped navigate. His employer was notified about the expense report issue and conducted their own investigation, which ended his employment there, though I won't pretend I orchestrated that. It happened because he had done what he had done. The house went to me under the prenuptial clause. My attorney confirmed the real property provision was enforceable given the documentation we had. He did not fight it, which told me either his attorneys had reviewed the same clause and reached the same conclusion, or he had finally, for once, decided not to manage the situation and simply accept it. Callum is almost 2 now. He toddles around the kitchen, pulling things out of cabinets and shrieking when Harper chases him and refuses to sleep unless I sit beside his crib and hum something tuneless for approximately 11 minutes. I know because I've timed it. Harper asks about her dad sometimes. They have dinner together every other Wednesday and every other weekend, per the custody arrangement. She comes home and tells me things he cooked for her and shows me pictures he took of her at the park. I keep my face neutral and say, "That sounds like fun, Bug," because she loves him and she should, and whatever he was to me, he is still her father. The attorney fees were significant. The forensic accountant was not cheap. There was a month in the middle of everything where I sat down with a yellow legal pad and wrote out every number I had and every number I owed and tried to understand what my life looked like from the outside, financially, as a single mother of 2, and it was a frightening piece of paper. But I had my mother's just-in-case money, grown slightly over 4 years. I had a job I was good at, and a profession that had not forgotten me during the months I'd worked part-time. I had my brother, who billed me for exactly nothing and will claim he doesn't want to be mentioned here, but I'm mentioning him anyway. I had my daughter standing on the back deck last April, watching a cardinal on the fence, whispering, "Mama, look, don't scare it." And I stood behind her with Callum on my hip, and we all 3 watched the bird until it flew away. I'm not going to tell you I'm grateful for what happened. I'm not. I'm not going to tell you everything happens for a reason, because I don't believe that, and I'm tired of people saying it like it costs them something. What I will tell you is that I know my own house now in a way I didn't before. Every number in it, every account, every document in the file cabinet in my closet, that I organized myself and understand completely. I know what my instincts feel like, the real ones, before I've talked myself out of them. I know what it costs to be managed, and I know I'm not going to pay that price again. Callum is asleep down the hall. Harper is probably still awake, reading under her covers with a flashlight she thinks I don't know about. The cardinal came back yesterday, same fence, same spot, and I saw it alone this time, and I stood at the kitchen window for a long moment and just looked at it. That's where I am. That's what it looks like now. I'll take it.